This was 1979, the days before the internet or any talk about near-death experience existed. It was a beautiful day. I was 19 years old, just starting to live, and life was great because I had my own apartment. I was working at a nightclub. I had two boyfriends at that time, and one of my girlfriends wanted to go horseback riding, and she canceled. So I thought, that's a beautiful day. I'll go out for a ride. Now, I've been around horses a lot, taken a lot of lessons, and always overestimated my skills. So I got a horse that was above my level because it was pretty. And I went out for the ride and hooked up with these two other riders and having a great day. And we decided to race back to the barn. Not my smartest decision in life, shall I say. Anyways, the horse was really taking off, taking speed. Very, very fast, fastest horse I've ever been on in my life. And the horse was getting away from me, but then the horse managed probably to hit the only golfer hole in the field in Centerville, Virginia. And I remember feeling like, I knew I was going to get clobbered. I've fallen off of enough horses to know, but what happened is, as we were riding and I felt my shoulder tilt, I felt myself coming out of the saddle. And I swore. And then 1 second I'm tilting and I'm going to fall, and the next I'm out of my body. And I never hit the ground. I never felt the impact. I was in a different place. Imagine it's like if you're sleeping in bed and it's in the middle of the night and you're in Iowa and someone picks you up and throws you in the Pacific Ocean. It was that abrupt. So I left my body and I went into a very dark velvet tunnel or chamber or whatever you want to call it. It was just whoosh. And I felt myself. No, I felt like I still had limbs. I felt like I was still me, but I was going through at a very high rate of speed. And I knew I was dead. So I was shocked because, here I am, a 19-year-old girl with all those emotions. I'm not an adult. So my feelings went like a roller coaster of intense fear, intense grief at the loss of life, anguish. It was gut-wrenching. It was awful. But there was something beautiful in it because I got to be reunited with my late grandfather, who I adored, who had died from cancer when I was 12. Still hard to talk about him, And I had a very personal conversation with him, stuff I just don't repeat because it was too personal, my grandfather. But to know that he still loved me and there was such a connection with us, and he was the one waiting for me, I mean, what a gift is that? I had, everybody talks about, you go through the tunnel, you have your life's review, you get shown things. But what other people recount about their near-death experience is, and you can't really explain to someone, is the splendor of it all. I had enhanced vision. I had I could hear, but I could converse. But you don't have a body. You think it's so elegant, the telepathy that you use, the language that you use. It's still, I was speaking in English. And in my mind, I was speaking like you and I are talking, but it was different. It was more elegant, shall we say, and more intensely. You got the meaning of the other person more. It's like trying to describe a color that you've never seen to somebody, really. So, I had this conversation with my grandfather. I was shown my life's review. And it wasn't pleasant. It wasn't, I wasn't a serial killer or something, or had done anything terrible to somebody. I never hurt puppies or kittens or run over any nuns with my car or anything like that. But it just shows that, you know, the inconsiderate crap you do or the sharp things you say to somebody that you don't think is a big deal. It's a big deal. It's a really big deal. And there were things explained to me how it works that I can't verbally bring back with me to explain to you. But would you like me to share a hypothesis?
I would love that. Yeah. How do you think it works?
I think it's like this. You can go through life and you can be your own worst enemy and make mistakes and miss opportunities and stuff like that. And you're only hurting yourself. And you know, we all do crap like that. That's how we learn. We're not put on this earth perfect or anything like that. And that's one thing. That's not catastrophic. But when you go and you interfere in somebody's destiny, okay, let's say you're a husband and you berate your wife and you berate her and you're verbally bring her down and you really change the course of her life. You haven't hit her. You haven't left her out in the cold broke. You didn't cancel her medical insurance. You didn't not feed her. You know, you're the husband, you're the provider, but you change who she was and the image of who she feels she is. You do that. That is a huge no-no. That is a huge, I wouldn't say sin, but it's a huge error. When you change somebody's destiny, that is like about one of the worst things you can do. Physically changing their destiny. Let's say you're, you know, you're a stick-up man and you rob a person and you know, their whole sense of safety is changed for the rest of their life. You shift where their life could have been. That is your biggest wrong that you can do, is to interfere in somebody's destiny. Now imagine this. Let's say you're a company and you've made a pill that'll help a lot of people. But boy, you know that 2% of those people are going to have an adverse reaction. They might die. You knew it was a bad deal when you put it out there, but you did it for the money. You do something like that and you go home to your family and you did it in a group. So you don't really feel it's like you didn't poison those people. Oh my gosh, when you have your life's review, each and every person where you've changed their destiny, you've changed their life, you've gotten them sick, you're going to feel their anguish, what it was like for them, maybe to never have that job or never have that family or the missed opportunities. And you're going to feel every bit of how it affected their families or their kids. So there's a huge accountability that you have when you have your life's review. Now, it's not a heaven and hell thing, Sabrina. There really isn't a heaven. There really isn't a hell. But there's something very close to heaven. We'll get to that later. But what I'm saying in this life's review, I saw my actions, like, you know, for being an idiot teenager and smarting off to somebody, you know, the things you do when you're a teenager. Okay, I saw all of that, how it affected people, but I also saw how damaging it was when people have been cruel or mean to me, how that these people were very damaged. Like I have a relative that was really awful, but I saw how they were coming from, just lashing out in their own unhappiness. So I got a more general understanding than a 19-year-old could handle. At 65, yeah, I could handle it. I could have a bigger prescription of life, but I got more information than I could digest. It wasn't, so that wasn't a pleasant experience, but I got a general feeling like, you know, I stopped myself before I'm going to make a mistake a lot quicker. I don't smart off. When someone cuts me off in traffic, I'm just glad they didn't shoot and murder me. I can hold my temper a lot more. There's times I lose it, I'm not perfect, but that life review had so many lessons, and it was so hard to translate. It's really hard to translate to you. I write about it, but it's hard to verbalize. Yeah.
Oh, I can imagine. And I think having that knowledge early on when you were 19, that everything you do has an impact beyond, the immediate gratification or punishment that you would probably receive. But we never expect there to be a long-term impact of our choices, right? And I can imagine having that knowledge, it must have affected how you then went through life.
It did. But it didn't, I have to say, it didn't make me, I didn't get this Gandhi wisdom or anything. I just got like, uh-oh, better not do that. But sometimes I still went and did it, Sometimes I popped my cork and didn't shut my mouth when I could have. And it's like the old saying, you get out the gun, you shoot yourself in the foot, and you do it again. Yeah, so it doesn't really give you enlightenment, but it does make you realize that, boy, you get the bill at the end of the day. And it's not as a punishment, it's more of a explanation and understanding, and you take those lessons with you. It's hard to verbalize. You gather up those lessons, and this whole thing, it felt like linear time was very long. So I said to my grandfather, I was anguished after, I said, oh, this has been so long. This whole accounting thing, it felt, I don't know, like days or something. It didn't feel like, I wasn't dead that long. So it was mind bending. But then there was more after the life review. There was a lot more that I was shown.
So what have you seen afterwards?
Well, I guess I was shown, I'm just guesstimating, okay. Think of Earth is like right here, and there's like a crust, and here is physical reality, and we're on the crust of that. Then there's like all these layers outside of physical reality. And those are different dimensions or layers or vibrational, you call astral or whatever. But it's sort of like going on a super highway. After you die, you're left physical reality and you're sort of on this super highway. And each layer, or the further away from physical reality you get, it's less dense, it's more. Part of it later on is more thought reactive, but it's sort of like rings around the earth, if that is a way to explain it. I don't really know if it is. There's a lot more choices that you have after death, and that was a big shocker because I'm a Presbyterian. Well, I was a Presbyterian, raised in the church. My grandfather was a minister, but I never got indoctrinated. I really always had my doubts. I'd be in Bible study and we'd be studying, King David or something. And I think, oh, these guys died 2,000 years ago. What does that have to do with 1969, So I was always very naturally skeptical about organized religion. Now I'm totally removed from organized religion, but I'll get bad emails if I say how I really feel. But riding the superhighway, basically, like you're flying, it's such a rush. It feels great, but I was shown different things, and then it was over, and then I was back into my physical body, and that was awful, and it was anguished, and I didn't like it. So the whole thing, well, I have to say, was extremely stressful and mind-bending and sad. I felt tremendous sorrow coming back.
Was that because you had to go back to life and to life's challenges, or was the process of your soul coming back to your body painful and difficult?
Both. I mean, it really hurt being back into my body. It was like coming back with a thud. But I'd been shown things that I wasn't raised to understand. And I was on a neurological, I think, overload. Plus, I mean, I had a serious concussion and I was banged up bad. I broke my nose. I got the crooked finger from my broken finger, and it just hurt all over. But what hurt me the most was psychologically, finding my grandfather, then losing him, then realizing also in this experience that I learned I was more than my physical body. There is a continuation of existence after death, which I always thought there could have been, should have been, or, I didn't like the idea of reincarnation. I love the idea of going to source and feeling love and attaining it, and then but being drawn back. So there was a lot of down things about this the whole thing. When you leave your physical body, you go through the tunnel and you have a life's review, then you travel the superhighway, and it's just mind-bending. And then I got to this chamber, and it was shown to me by somebody who was behind me and to the side, and I couldn't really identify them. I was shown there was a line of souls that were my previous lives. There was like a line of males and a line of females, and I'm here stuck on, I can't have been a man. I'm a girly girl. No, I can't do that. And realizing, oh my gosh, I've done this before. I didn't like the idea of reincarnation. I've done this before, realizing I've been the victim in the past life. I've been the villain. I've probably played every role and then I thought, well, I really must have flunked this because I had to come back and do it so many times. And here I am being shown this thing, and all of these souls just are drained of color and they're just lined up. Of course, I had to go and touch them. I had to go like bat the beehive. And then I wasn't thinking logical questions to ask because I was in general disbelief, like, hey, this can't work. But I was shown it does. I was shown I've been female and male, and there's a gathering point. I didn't get that. What did that mean? And as soon as I'm asking these more logical questions, it's over, and I got to look back, and I think that was the earth that I saw, and I thought, I can't be looking at the earth because I hate heights. I was still me, and I was still thinking like a teenager. So it's sort of like being car sick and drunk at the same time. You're just so confused. Like, this can't be true. No, this can't be, but it's there in vivid experience. And the hall or the chamber that I'm in, it had walls, but it didn't. And that is sort of like so cool, but weird at the same time. When I was finally catapulted or traveled to as far as you can go and actually come back to my source, or it was like bursting through clouds. It was the highlight of the experience, like bursting through clouds, and you're floating in a sea of love and warmth. And it was then I had no wants. I wanted for nothing. It was total peace, bliss, something that doesn't even exist in this reality. And I was floating in the sea of love with these other souls. And I first thought it has to be, I felt like I was a point of consciousness. I didn't even feel, in my extremities. But I still felt like me psychologically. Music came in the walls in random waves, and you're floating in the sea of love. The closest thing I can compare it to is clouds, and it's your source. And definitely people would say heaven, but I think it's your source of origin. And your final destination, as far as I can say, it's as far as you can go. But as soon as I was able to accept the bliss and then realize that I was probably floating along with other parts of me, it was over. So you go to get this good thing and then boom, you're pulled back, and it's sort of like you're cheated and you feel gypped that you're not getting all the answers, and I couldn't think fast enough. And as I was coming back, that's as far as I went. As I was coming back and talking to my grandfather about it, then boom, I'm getting pulled back into physical reality again. I felt gypped, and I felt that there was a lot of information that was being taken from me, that the event and things, I'm only able to remember fragments. And I feel doubly cheated because I didn't get to take the whole experience back with me. So I know I'm grateful, but that's how I felt at the same time.
Oh, absolutely. And I think your feelings are valid. What I was wondering was when you saw this line of souls from previous lives and you were coming to terms with the idea of reincarnation, which you didn't believe in previously,
Right.
did you get to know or see any kinds of experiences that you've had before that would have informed lessons that you sort of, or skills or fears that you have in the current lives? Did you see any connection there?
Yeah, later I did, but not right then. Later I did. Much later, I was in my 50s where I had a flashback, and yeah, I had yeah. But think about this. If I had lived, or I have lived, as a male, female, all the knowledge that was at my fingertips that I couldn't touch, all the language, all the skills, all the life's experience, the talents, maybe one of these past lives was a great musician or a great singer or a great something. And I didn't get any of that. And I kind of, you know, would have really liked to take something back with me, but I wasn't able to.
Oh, I can imagine. I'm always thinking that if, for instance, say you're an Olympic swimmer in one lifetime, then probably you'll be really good at swimming in the next. You might not make a career out of it, but I tend to think maybe the things that you've mastered, such as, when we master gratefulness or we master,
Yeah.
skills like being disciplined, having gratitude, those sort of things. I
Yeah.
tend to think, but it's just my belief, there's no proof for that. I tend to think we take that on. And I tend to think that people that have gone through severe trauma as well, like think of abuse or really difficult childhoods, I tend to think we also see them more mature in this life, but I tend to think they take that maturity and what they've learned from it in other lifetimes as well. That's just my hypothesis.
I think that there is really something to that, because other family members have said this to me when they were alive. Okay. Some things that I had a natural inclination for that were just really, really intense. From the time I was like a toddler, I wanted a horse. I wanted to ride horses. I talked about horses all the time. I used to dream that I was riding a horse all the time. So I was so compulsed with horses that I just pushed the envelope. I actually got clobbered a bunch of times, and I ended up having horses, having a horse farm, being around them all my adult life, because that drive, that connection was just, my mother said it was inborn, that I came out of the womb and hit the saddle because that's all I wanted to do. And I talked about horses. She said it was very annoying. And like when it came to swimming, I had 2 lessons and then I was proficient in being a swimmer. Had no fear, could go underwater, do anything swim wise. I wish I had other talents, but I want to share with you something that is I've wondered about. Okay, later in life, all the paranormal experiences, the near death, drove me to start writing. And I'm dyslexic. I flunked every English class you could possibly encounter. I had tremendous dyslexia, could barely read. I was truant all through high school because I just got headaches when I read. So when I was in my early 20s, after the near-death experience, I thought something was telling me you gotta do this reading. You gotta make yourself read. So this was like when I was 20. I started reading, and I really kind of broke through the dyslexia with very hard work that I could read and read well and educate myself, and I did. Then I decided I've got these stories I'm going to write. So I had to learn how to do the computer. And I had this story in my mind. So I never took a writing class ever. Didn't watch a video about it, but I knew how to lay it out. I don't know how I knew how to do it, but I was able to write, 3 novels and then easily write a screenplay. The novels were a bit of work. The last one wasn't too hard, and it was real easy for me to write a screenplay. And it just came so naturally being a storyteller. I'm wondering if that was a bleed over for a past life, because without an education, without, read at the 6th grade level when I graduated high school, how did it just happen for me and just get easier and easier? It wasn't persistence. It just happened. And I've always thought maybe there's a little bleed over. So another time, when I was directing a movie, I had to get, because I wrote, produced, and directed, I had to do this blocking scene. And I'm just doing it like, okay, 1, 2, 3. I just walked in there and knew how to do it. Not like I'm really good at making movies, because I did my screw ups with it too. But I heard a little voice in my head say, "You've done this before." And I had that aha moment. How would you walk into it and know how to do this thing? And then it just clicked. I thought that was something, I thought that was some sort of a leftover or a gift I was able to take with me. I don't know, but I thought it was kind of interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you shared that, because it reminded me of Elizabeth Gilbert, who's the author of Eat, Pray, Love. And
Yeah.
in another one of her books, what she says is that she sees writing as a daily commitment. So she sits down at her desk and writes every day. It's not always good, but that's her commitment to herself. And
Yeah.
what she has shared about ideas, she said, I think ideas are just floating around. And if they find you at your desk and working, then you're going to get that idea. So she doesn't take any ownership in having an idea for a certain movie or certain book, sorry. But she thinks they're just floating around. And as long as you're in the flow, the idea will sort of find you as the writer, and then you will bring it to life, which I thought was a very beautiful way of phrasing it. And I think it's very similar to what you've mentioned as well.
Well, that's not my process. That's not my process. I have a different process when I write. I do a lot of daydreaming and thinking it out with my head. But they definitely, it says that my internet connection is unstable. Is it okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
now it is. Yeah, you're frozen for a
Okay.
bit.
I have a different process. We all have different processes. So what works for me is I'm kind of churning up things that have happened to me, or and putting a spin on it. Everybody has a different process.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's nothing short of amazing that you've made it work, despite your challenge, because I know I have friends with dyslexia. It's not easy. I think you need to work a couple of times as hard as anybody else who doesn't have it. So really a big
Still can't spell. I'm a terrible speller and I'm totally dyslexic, but I have this, like I see the book like this tapestry and I'm filling it in. I'm not a great explainer, but I get the job done.
Well, that's what matters in
I
the
do.
end. So tell me about processing the NDE afterwards, because you came back, it was painful, but it was also a time where you wouldn't have known what an NDE is. So you must have struggled with your concept of what happened to you, but it must have also been difficult to share or to think about sharing it with other people. How did that process go for you, and what were your feelings?
Well, Sabrina, it brought me a lot of sorrow. I had the near-death experience, and then I was rushed to the hospital and I passed out. And I get into the hospital, and my mom happened to work at Fairfax Hospital, and she was called, and my mom was down there, and doctor, nurses, everybody was around me. And after, the x-rays and stuff, I started to tell the doctor what had happened. And it just like a curtain dropped. He went from being very compassionate to angry, annoyed, asked me what drugs I was taking. My mother said, listen, this girl does not take drugs. And I didn't even drink beer. I just didn't enjoy the buzz. I didn't enjoy drugs. That wasn't a saint, believe me. So, and then he berated me. And he said some very painful things. And all his compassion stopped. And I wasn't trying to tell him to make him believe. I just wanted to tell somebody what had happened. I got to see my grandfather. This was big. And my mother sensed that I was really distressed, and he should have admitted me to the hospital. He discharged me. My mother was arguing with him. She's got a severe head injury. She stopped breathing. I don't have sympathy for drug addicts and blah, 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 blah. So we get out to the intersection in Maryfield. I'm in my mother's VW Rabbit. And I got this urge. I had to go back to find my grandfather. And I started getting out of the car in the middle of traffic at this, the stoplight. So I was not 100% grounded. And then I went home to my mom's before I went to my apartment. And I had this anguish for about 12 hours. And I just decided I didn't want to talk about it. Got up the courage it took to see a therapist a few weeks later. And she leaned over and said to me, are we having a pity party about our broken nose? I got shamed again. Now, I'm not able to explain it to everybody. I thought you could trust a doctor. You could trust a therapist, psychotherapist, or a psychologist, or whatever the hell she was. Well, you could. And I really everything imploded in me. Everything imploded. The experience, people are going to think I'm crazy. They're going to think I chase UFOs. They're going to think the dog down the street is sending me messages. I'm not going to be a wackadoo. So I didn't talk about it. I just wanted to bury it. And there was a lot of sorrow, and it just wasn't a good time. I couldn't process. I was a kid. I thought like a kid. And I wanted somebody to tell me what had happened. How did it make sense? Later, I told everything to my sister, who totally believed me, who had some psychic abilities, just innate and natural. And that helped. But I really didn't want to. I just felt like, I didn't want to come across as a weirdo, and that's the only thing people would see. So when I got in relationships, I didn't talk about it. It wasn't something shameful. It's just something I couldn't express. And like most repressed feelings, it has an effect on you. That's what was my catalyst to be an author, because I had to get it out. But on the other part, I didn't have my core values had changed. and I couldn't really express it to other people. And I didn't go to church. I didn't feel connected to organized religion. I felt a deep spirituality for the first time, an authentic connection to the afterlife. But I looked at it this way. I'm here alive now. I'm going to live the best life as Janice Lura Catholic as I can. I'm going to be there on the other side forever, so I might as well not worry about it. So I really tried to block it out. And I was doing a lot of reading and trying to self-educate at the time, and I busied myself in that, reading about history and things like that. It was just a great diversion. But like most repressing, and then I had the after effects of the near-death experience that happened with it were very upsetting. Okay. It just seemed like a little something the internet mentioned.
Sorry, you're a bit frozen, so I can.
I had a friend that passed away in an accident. Sorry, am I frozen now?
Yeah, you're coming back now. Yeah, the sound was
Okay,
was
sorry.
broken for a while. Yeah. So the last thing I could hear was about the after effects.
Okay, were after effects that were totally unexpected after my near-death experience, after the accident, and seeing that was terrifying. And my a spirit or a dead soul came to me in the shape of an orb. I got up and ran through the house like a mental patient with her hair on fire. And then I called my sister and I went, was hysterical. Who died in the family? Somebody died because they just came to see me. They were just in the bedroom, and thank God I had a nightgown on, because I'd have run through that house buck naked. I was that freaked out, and I was shaking. Just like, you know, when you take your dog to the vet and their leg is shaking, mine was shaking. I'd just seen a dead person or a ghost or a spirit or whatever you call, and that was not in my life's plan to have this happen. So my sister Linda said, well, Aunt Evelyn died this morning. And I said, well, she came to see me, you know, and things like that started happening. Didn't really handle it well, but I just kind of went on with my life, and I was busy. I mean, I was a model in New York, and I was working on a TV show, scrambling to make a living, sometimes working in nightclubs. I was just a young girl time and living life. So this was just not something I really wanted to happen. Then a few more incidents, paranormal incidents or whatever happened. So I thought, okay, I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm seeing a therapist. I'm spilling my guts. Maybe they'll medicate me. I don't care. I got to tell somebody. So I told my sister, and I told this therapist who was wonderful, very famous psychotherapist in New York, very famous woman. She listened. She got to know me. I told her everything. And over a couple of months, she just sat me down and she said, this is all connected to your near-death experience. She started to explain things to me. She said, you know, you're not crazy. You're not exaggerating. You're not hysterical. There's a logic order in the, you know, she started to explain things. And then she said, I said, well, who do I talk to? And she said, don't talk to anybody else, because they're not going to be as understanding, but read Robert Monroe's book, Far Journeys. And so I read Robert Monroe's books, plural, and it was the hugest relief. I was 25 years old. I was reading Robert Monroe, who was well documented about out-of-body experiences, and he had a consciousness research center in Virginia. I want to go there one day, but I read his books. It explained everything, basically. You know, you're not crazy, you're having out-of-body experience, you're able to have a better perception, there's an overlapping of realities, you're just able to see a little more. Thank God there was an explanation, and I was able to kind of go live my life, because this had happened to other people who've had near-death experience that come back with very limited psychic abilities or whatever. Everybody's got a pinch of psychic. Nobody's got a full cup. I don't go for the 1-800 psychics that can see your dead Aunt Sally or anything like that. I don't give readings. If I was truly psychic, I'd be at the racetrack hauling in the money and not being on this podcast, okay? I don't think anybody's that psychic. I just don't think it could happen. But if it does, good for them. But it was a hard thing to handle because you never knew when a paranormal experience was gonna come. The first 15 years, it was a little distressing, and now it doesn't bother me at all. Because it's rare, it's uncontrollable, and when it does happen, it's a gift. But there's no handbook. There's no like instruction book that comes back. You've had a near-death experience. Now A, B, C, and D is going to happen to you. Who? I mean, I get G, F, and H. I don't, it's just weird. But it did save my life. So would you like to hear about that story?
Yes, of course. I would love that.
Okay. You come back with a little tiny pinch of psychic. Okay. Or you're able to perceive something that you couldn't perceive before the NDE. That's all I can say. So I was sick. I was 34 years old. I was sick, and I'd gone to the doctors in the hospital, and you're going to be okay. You're just miserable. You have an inflamed liver capsule. That's what was my diagnosis. But okay, it'll go away. Didn't. I felt worse and worse. One morning I woke up. My grandfather walked into my bedroom. I can describe every detail of his clothing. His flannel shirt was gray and burgundy and in checks. He had a thin leather belt on. He had this gray trousers, and one had a faux pocket with a button. It was my grandfather. And he was in his 60s, and he sat on my bed, and I'm stunned to see him, and he put his hand over my abdomen, and I'm looking at him because he's a living color. He's not like white or anything. So he says to me, "Your spleen." And then he dissolved. He said, "Your spleen, your spleen." And I didn't even know where your spleen was. So I go in, I tell my mother all about it. She's a registered nurse, and she's really concerned. And I thought, maybe I didn't know what it meant. So then a couple days later, I wake up and I'm sitting in bed, and somebody whispered in my ear, "Spleen, spleen." And it wasn't a male voice, it was female. And then I had this wave of emotion that came with the auditory. And I knew that if I didn't get my spleen out, I was going to die. That's what I was shown or felt, or the impact. It was like getting hit with a wet blanket. Went to the doctor, spilled my guts. He looked at me and he said, "I know you. You're a pretty rational person. I know you're sick. I've heard things like this in my career." It was an older doctor. He wrote me a order for a splenectomy. So I got the splenectomy. Oh my God, it was so awful. I wish I hadn't done it. It was just terrible. It was like getting gutted like you gut a fish. Anyways, doctor came in after the splenectomy, and I'm like, "Oh, give me morphine or shoot me." It was awful. So he said, "Well," he said, "I'm glad we did the surgery." And I said, "Well, one of us is glad, because I wasn't. I thought, what have I done to myself? I didn't need." He said, you had a few hours, maybe a day to live. Your spleen had hemorrhaged, and there was a clot the size of a man's hand at the part attached to your spleen. Had you had a thump, it would have broken off. You would have bled to death. You had very good intuition to get in here. And I was like, I don't know if anybody did me a favor. It was that bad. But All I know is that my grandfather reached out. I was able to perceive what he had to say. And I took action, and I'm here. And that was 30 years ago.
Wow, that's beyond amazing. And I think those are the moments where it's really important to trust what we hear or what we say, because if you were able to perceive it, then it must have been really important. So, and as you said, taking action on the basis of that, I think that's the key step, because often our intuition will say something, we will feel we're on the right path or the wrong path. But often we avoid taking any kind of action, and we need more proof. So I think that's truly the important element here.
Well, it's about listening, you listen to your gut more because it's kind of telling you. It's a very American saying. It really doesn't tell you the wrong thing, but I could have been very easily dissuaded, I was in so much pain. I would not have thought about a spleen. I didn't even know what one was. But I think that maybe everybody gets these interventions, and some of us can perceive it and some of us can't. I'm guessing, because I really don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think so. I think so. I think we have gut feelings. I often say that, and I think that's available to everybody. I don't think I'm special in any way, but I always sort of am able to perceive if somebody is a good person to me or not, when I sort of meet them. So before they've said anything, it's I don't see their energy, I don't see that, but I'm able to receive a message from it. So when somebody's in front of me, I sort of know, is that person going to be a friend or is it not going to be a friend? And whenever I've dismissed that sort of knowing, as there's no proof for it, there's no basis for it, so I'm just going to go ahead and do what my logical self says I
Yeah.
should do. It's always ended up not working out. So
Yeah.
I know now whenever I get a bad feeling, as we often say with a person, I don't necessarily need a reason, and I just go in with a bit more caution. It's not necessarily that I will cut people off of my life or anything like that, but I will be a bit more cautious. And other times, maybe I'll be a bit more open than I would normally be if I'm getting a good sense from somebody.
Right, right. I think that's a very smart thing. Um, yeah, yeah, I think that's a smart thing. I feel very loved. I felt a tremendous concern and love for my grandfather, and I think that I think we all have guides, not angels, but guides that are there helping, trying to help loved ones or people that you're connected to in your soul group, perhaps. And I always say that we've all got a cheerleading team on the other side. I try to make some happy spins out of it because I know that my recounting of my near-death experience comes across grim and distressing, but that's because I was a kid. Had I had it in later in life after 50, I could have had more of an understanding how things work. But you're a teenager, you're a teenager.
Oh, absolutely. So you've mentioned your books and starting writing so that you can share about your NDE while still being a bit safe without sharing your own NDE. And I find it very interesting that you write fiction based on a near-death experience, and you've also made a movie about it. So could you share a bit more about what your books are meant to teach us?
Well, I wanted to convey a message, but without preaching. I wanted to write, my horses are all set in my books are all set in the horse world. It starts in 1979. There's a tragedy, and all these characters come together, and there's a group of them that have all had near-death experiences, and they have came back with different gifts and abilities. And I always put in something that's really happened to me. So when I explain a near-death and experience, It's pretty factual. It's like 90% truth and 10% fiction, because heck, you're writing a book. But there's a love story there, a love triangle, so that you've got, you know, a mystery to solve. But then I'm trying to explain how things work in the afterlife. And I'm a very, very vivid, detailed writer, and other people that have read the book, my books, Near Death Connection, have contacted me and said, oh my gosh, you got this right. You got that looking down at your body right. You got, you know, you really spot on. So that's made me feel good. My second book is Throwaway Horses. So I changed central characters, and my character Sharon Landry, and who's the heroine of the story, is most like my own personality, except better. She's better than I am. But I take it back when she did this terrible, awful thing back in 1959, and I put my love of horses. And there is, I'm like not a radical person when it comes to animals, but kind of right up there as your neurotic pet owner. So she is basically solving a murder, and she gets drawn into this, exposing this horse theft ring that takes horses to the slaughterhouses illegally. So it's a little more Stephen King, a lot more entertainment, but I do explain what it's like and her experiences, her after effects of her near-death experience. There's a couple of what I've had, I just put in the book. And then Reincarnation Connection, my third novel, there's a past life murder mystery my heroine, Tess Hamilton, has to solve. So I try to do that, but I tried to put in what it's like to, you know, see somebody deceased come right out of thin air and talk to you. So I tried to put in as much as I could. Now with my movie, I made a movie that was a total comedy and had nothing to do with about near-death experiences. But what I was able to do is have a team of paranormal investigators that go through a zombie apocalypse, because that was just fun. But I put in real footage that paranormal experts have taken at my house. I put that in the movie because I thought that would be cool. I was never going to talk about my near-death experiences. I've written the books, and then I met some people at a writers group when I went to try to pitch my books. They said, you're 50. You're on the wrong side of 50. You've never written anything. No one's going to take you seriously. You don't have a prayer of selling your books. And I said, what do I have to do? And they said, make an internet footprint. Then people would be more interested. So I thought, what the heck? What have I got to lose? I got a good sense of humor. I did live in a haunted farm. So I put it on eBay with an hysterically funny pitch, you know, ghosts included but not guaranteed. I just did something on a lark. Well, about 60,000 people went and read it. And then the news teams came, CBS, ABC, NBC, Fox, everybody came to do interviews. And I said, well, I don't care. I'll just be honest. Yeah, the house is haunted. I am able to see ghosts from time to time. I write about it just to say that I'm an author. And I said all these funny things. And of course, they edit out every joke, and you look like a lunatic living on a horse farm that sees dead people. I didn't care. I was over 50. The embarrassment gene had vanished. I had a good time with it. And then the paranormal investigation teams wanted to all debunk me. 5 teams, 5 separate teams with no knowledge of each other came to my house. They got under my house, looked for recording equipment, everything. I was having a good time with it. All teams had positive findings, Class A EVPs. I didn't realize you could record orbs and do all this stuff. So I'm not a techie person. So I had a good time. I became friends with all of them. They're very, very ethical people, educated people that are trying to get paranormal evidence. I don't need to get evidence. I've already lived it. But it was pretty cool to see these, or I'd go from one room to another, and then the orbs would follow me. I didn't realize in an infrared camera you could record these things. I didn't realize that the EVP, you could record this stuff. I just hadn't looked into it. I read Monroe's books, Sabrina, and I just wasn't interested in anything else. But the cool thing was Jeff Sanford and his team did an EVP, and you can hear a clear, audible male voice. So Jeff posed the question, are there any children? And you could hear a clear, audible male voice say, you have to look. So that was considered a Class A because it was a full sentence and an answer to the question. And we were all out of the house when this happened. So I played it for my mom before she died. She goes, oh, sounds like my brother's voice. So I thought that was pretty cool. I took some of the evidence and I got on a couple of reality TV shows, My Ghost Story Caught in Camera, Paranormal Night Shift, Shave, and told what happened. I just thought that was kind of cool. Had a little fun with it. I had a little bit of a sense of humor, naughty sense of humor. But I just thought it was pretty interesting. I relaxed about the paranormal. I've accepted it. I'm closer to death now. I'm 65, so it doesn't matter if somebody thinks I'm a nut or a nutter or anything. Because like a friend of mine said, well, I just don't believe. And I said, well, 100 years ago from now, when we're both dead, I'm coming up to you and saying, I told you so. So having a more relaxed sense of humor about it all has helped me. The books were cathartic. I got out all of the things and the angst through the characters that you have when you have a near-death experience. Whoops. Did I lose you for a second?
No, you didn't.
Okay.
Still here.
Okay. Can you still see me?
Yeah.
Okay, I just can't see you for right now. So I got out all those feelings, which was really important and really helped me a lot.
That's really good. And I think, as a note to anybody who has had an NDE and isn't sure about how to share it or to talk to people,
Yeah.
I think nowadays there's so much more support out there than back when
Yes.
you had your NDE. There's support groups, there's, a wealth of information on YouTube, the internet, blogs, everything. So you feel less alone. And I often think, had I had an NDE, when I was young, there was no internet. I mean, I would have thought of myself as crazy for experiencing that. I would have doubted myself because I'm the kind of person that would do that. And I would start being insecure about what I've experienced because it doesn't match what I was told about reality.
No.
So I can only imagine how distressing it is for somebody to keep that to themselves and to go through life, knowing that that thing has happened. So for anybody out there, look for support, find ways to share. And it doesn't always need to be opening yourself up and sharing your story, but it might be, as you did, writing about it or writing pieces, trying to somehow work it into what you do so that you're able to process it and it doesn't have a hold of you that much.
Yeah, it doesn't have that. It's not the end all of your life. Also, I didn't talk about it with anybody but just a handful of people for 30 years. That's a long time to keep a lid on something. I would suggest if somebody who's had an NDE, be very selective who you share this with. Be very selective. And Robert Monroe's books helped me a lot. William Buhlman is a very logical writer that I highly recommend. Other than that, I can't recommend anybody else. The sad thing about near-death experience and sometimes the paranormal after effects, there's a lot of people that I find less than credible that are attracted to this whole thing. There's some very credible people. There's some very less than credible. But what I also want to say, I've gotten some strange emails over the time. There really is no hell. And if you have a near-death experience and you're going through it and you see these horrible things, they're only your own fears and thought projections. You just send these things love and they dissolve. That's the only thing the key thing that I can say, because I'm not a very wise person. Got a bad temper and a potty mouth. and I'm very human. And I don't go walk around saying, oh, I'm so enlightened, because I'm really not. I didn't do that much better in life after my near-death experience, maybe a little, but not like I should have. You've got to have some self-forgiveness when you go through your life's review. Most of us are doing the best we can at the time with the knowledge that we have. It's very easy when you've had a near-death experience to beat yourself up over the missed opportunities. Very, very, and that's what I did. I got stuck on the missed opportunities and the mistakes, and I didn't see the whole thing as the gift it really was. Because I've had a near-death experience and realized that I'm more than my physical body and there's continuation of existence, it gave me the strength, or at least the tenacity, when I got ill with autoimmune disease, to fight it a lot harder, to realize this isn't the end all, to do better when it came to that. But we all have these challenges that we've, in our lives. And think of physical reality. Being born is a big school with mandatory attendance, and it's not easy. It's not easy for anybody, but it's also an exquisite teaching machine, learning center. And that's helped me, because I know that the love continues, Sabrina, to know that when I do transition, and I'm not in any rush, I want to have a good time while I'm here. But when I do transition, I know that, I'll be reunited, if I want and if they want, to people that I, go into their loving arms, and that there is a consensus reality. There's a lot more decisions when you die than you realize. Most of us don't go that far into the layers. Most people just stop at what's a consensus reality, the best of Earth. And think about it, when you die, you don't have to pay taxes. You don't have to go to the dentist. There's some perks.
Oh, absolutely. You've just sold me on that. Taxes and dentists, two of my biggest fears.
Yeah.
And I think as with most people.
Well, there damn well better be key lime pie and ice cream, because boy, I sure like those two things.
Oh, and then pie also that does not go to your hips. So imagine eating all the I think we're getting a bit off topic, but that would be my wish for the afterlife. Just having anything I want, not having to work out, and then things just sorting themselves out.
I know you've got to have a sense of humor about some of this, because it's pretty mind-bending. And I always tell jokes badly, but I have a really good sense of humor, and that's helped me a lot. I don't take myself all that seriously. I'm very clear about what happened to me and my perception of it. And I share that because I don't want, if I help one person, Sabrina, avoid the isolation, the anguish that I did, that it's been worth going on these podcasts and talking and sharing, because I had a real tough time after mine.
And I definitely think you do make an impact. Now, I want to ask you, as a lot of times our audience will want to know more about you or reach out to you. We've also mentioned the books that you've written and your movie. Could you tell us where we can find you and where we can find your work?
Well, on Amazon is my movie, and that was another apocalyptic zombie movie. And it's just a lark. It's a whole lot of funny, and it's a PG-13. You've got zombies raiding a porn theater. That is where my mind was. I needed money for medical bills, so I made this movie in a short period of time. But I'm a serious author. My books are called Near-Death Connection, Throwaway Horses, Reincarnation Connection by Lura, the neardeathsaga.com. You can find them, or just go to Lura, LURAKETCH.com, and there's links to everything, and some of my first person paranormal experiences that I have on YouTube and stuff. Well, I do try to take little segments and explain, how things work and what happened for particular experiences. like my first out-of-body experience, I rate that, and my return to physical reality. So I've tried to different creative avenues, but thank you for asking.